In his new book, The Next Decade, Stratfor's founder George Friedman argues that the preoccupation of American foreign policy in the next 10 years will be the Middle East, and Iran will be at the center of this. Dr. Friedman is in the study where he wrote the book.
Iran is the largest conventional military force in the Persian Gulf region, absent the United States. I mean, this is the fundamental fact that has to be faced by anyone dealing with this. Whether they have nuclear weapons or they don't have nuclear weapons, if the United States leaves the region, then Iran is going to be the preeminent power. Now, in 10 years, I expect Turkey to be both able and willing to challenge Iranian power, but I don't expect that in the next 10 years. The United States wants to leave Iraq. It is pledged to be out of there by the end of this year. If the United States fulfills that pledge, Iran is going to be the dominant power in Iraq and will also overshadow the rest of the Arabian Peninsula. And so one of the fundamental questions the United States must now answer is, can it afford to leave Iraq and therefore put Iran in this position? Can it afford to stay there? And all of these decisions will depend not on the situation in Iraq, nor on what Saudi Arabia wants or what Israel wants. It really depends on what sort of relationship the United States has with Iran. And if it is as bad as it is today, then withdrawal is impossible and the United States remains bogged down in the region.
What then are the options for the president?
There are obviously two choices. One is a major war against Iran, conducted from the air, designed to destroy the Iranian Navy, so it can't close the Straits of Hormuz, the Army, the Air Force. That is easier said than done. Iran is a large country. We've learned that air power has limits, and it would open up the possibility of tremendous instability in the region. The other is for the United States to do what is traditionally done when it has faced an enemy that it can't live with and can't live without. And for example, the way that Franklin Roosevelt formed an alliance with Joseph Stalin against Adolf Hitler, or the way in which Richard Nixon went to communist China in order to have an alignment with China against the Soviet Union. And so what I'm suggesting here is that in the same way that an American-Soviet alliance was unthinkable, an American alliance with communist China was unthinkable just a couple of years before that, some sort of relationship with Iran, as unthinkable as it is today, represents the solution. This goes back to Sherlock Holmes. When everything else that you've thought of is impossible, what remains, however improbable, is the only possible outcome. I think that an all-out war against Iran is impossible for military reasons rather than any others. And that, I think, means that the United States is going to have to seek an accommodation with Iran. Whether Iran will want one will be an interesting question.
How can the president reach out to Iran without being condemned as a wimp?
Well, I mean, this is exactly the problem that Nixon faced in reaching out to China, or that Roosevelt faced in reaching out to Stalin. And they were both condemned. They managed it, each in different ways, by being superb leaders, by outmaneuvering, out-talking, out-thinking their critics. If you don't have that capability, you can't do this. Nixon, for example, had the tremendous advantage that he was a right-wing anti-communist, and it was very difficult to call him soft on communism, although he actually turned out to be pretty soft on communism. Roosevelt was certainly more vulnerable to charges since he was a leftist, but he was a superb rhetorician. And the fact of the matter is the American public is pretty smart, and they knew that the choice was not supporting Stalin or not supporting Stalin. The choice was a world dominated by Hitler or not dominated by Hitler, and they understood the lesser of two evils.
And Dr. Friedman's book, The Next Decade, is published by Doubleday and available from good bookshops, or you can order it online at www.stratfor.com. Thanks for your time today. In the next part of the conversation, we'll be talking about America's future relationship with Israel. Until then, goodbye.